So my name's Philip Hayes. I'm a member of the Red Hat mobile practice. So today I'm going to talk about building mobile workforce management solutions. I've been involved in a number of projects with Red Hat, formerly Feed Henry, building and deploying workforce management solutions on the Red Hat mobile application platform. So just want to have a discussion today around what's involved in those kind of projects, what kind of functionality they provide and so on, and the various different sort of stages that we go through. So this is just a bit agenda what I'm going to go through today. We're just going to go through, as I say, look at what is a mobile workforce management solution, some of the typical features they might provide, common discussion points. I want to try and get maybe make that a little bit more interactive, and then look at a typical project, an overview of a project, a timeline, that kind of thing. And then maybe look at an example of a workforce management solution that we would have built, and then the typical architecture as well. We do have there is a product which is called Raincatcher, which is some open source modules which can be used within the Red Hat mobile application platform. So I'm going to give an introduction to that as building blocks towards building a full WFM type solution. So what is workforce management? It's effectively the ability to schedule jobs to specific users on any device and track and report the progress of those jobs. So it applies to a range of industries. We've provided workforce management solutions to utilities, to companies performing clinical trials. We did a project in the UK, which was for a county council, so that they have members of the public can report where there's potholes and cracks in the sidewalk and so on, and then they get dispatched to engineers then who go out and repair those defects and so on. So that's all, it's just anywhere really where there are a large number of field engineers who are out on the road and they need to get a list of jobs that they need to process for the day, and then to be guided through those jobs and ensure that they're doing everything safely and fully compliant and so on. So really, it applies to a lot of industries. It's pretty amazing what kind of, the array of sort of current solutions we find out in the marketplace. We did a project a couple of years ago where each engineer had to have 3 different pieces of equipment going out on site, kind of an old Windows rugged laptop, a pretty basic smartphone, and a barcode scanner. And they had to use all 3 of those devices in order to complete a job. And in fact, the smartphone, that aspect was so backward. Effectively what they were doing was they were taking multimedia messages and they were getting emailed to a manager who was then sitting at home and going through all of those emails and looking for issues with the work and so on. So that's the kind of solutions that we're looking to replace. So obviously with good smartphones and tablets now, all of that can be combined into one device, and that's the goal. So typical features of a workforce management solution. They tend to kind of go through a range of different things. Most important, obviously, is job scheduling, so the ability to schedule jobs to users, so that again, when they start their day, they can get their list of jobs for the day, and go through them, and they can be delivered overnight or synchronized whenever they turn on their devices. Asset management is a key component as well, which is allowing users to keep track of any assets that they have with them. So, a typical scenario there would be that the user starts their day, they load their van in the morning, and they might be scanning assets onto the van, and straight away all of that asset information is being sent back onto the back-end system, so they now know it's with that particular engineer. As they use those assets then on the job, they're scanned then off the van onto the premise wherever the job is, and that is then linked to that customer. One of the most important things around the workforce management solutions is the ability to work offline and online seamlessly. So the user needs to be able to go to areas where there's bad cell phone coverage, for example, or no Wi-Fi, and to be able to work there uninterrupted. So they can continue working on a job, and when they come back online, that information then needs to be synchronized back with the back-end system, without any interaction from the user. Quite often there's a workflow engine involved, so that you can specify and design different workflows that a user needs to go through depending on what kind of job. and they can be quite complex. In the example of the utilities project that we worked on, that it was replacing electricity and water meters for customers. So depending on the type of electricity meter that the job was involving, a different workflow would need to be followed by that engineer in order to do that job. So the ability to define these workflows and customize them and deploy them onto the device is very important. Getting continual updates of the status of those jobs, feeding those into back-end systems, so customer service can at any point find out what's the status of XYZ job, understand if an engineer is having a problem, if they've completed and so on. Getting that kind of immediate feedback is absolutely critical. And this is one of the areas where we really see a very, very quick return on investment. It's being able to sort of understand the progress of jobs, being able to dispatch new jobs and so on to engineers as well. So dynamic forms sort of feeds into the workflow piece, but it's the ability to create custom forms, so forms being lists of input fields and drop downs and so on, and to be able to update those and make changes to them as necessary without redeploying the client application. So be able to push those new forms and updates out to the user. So as a new type of piece of equipment comes out or a new workflow, these forms can be designed and pushed out as required. I kind of touched on this one, emergency dispatch. Again, it's something that isn't possible without this type of workforce management solution. So, while users are relying on having to use laptops and having to be connected and so on, it's impossible to push out emergency jobs to those users. So, as soon as they're able to get everything they need on a tablet, with cellular connectivity and push messaging ability, new jobs can be dispatched out to that user. And again, there's an immediate return on investment in that, being able to push those out. SLA escalation then is also integral as well. So to allow customer service to be alerted if a particular job is going to breach SLA. So is an engineer, are they in risk of getting to that job on time? Is the SLA going to be breached? So to be able to raise that alarm and potentially dispatch it to a different engineer, find out which engineers are nearby, dispatch them, reroute them around, and so on. It all provides that kind of ability. And that's obviously what's essential for that is GPS worker and job tracking. So understanding where those users are and so on. Again, it really adds value to your dispatch. A couple of other things anyway, obviously team management and time tracking, they're fairly standard. Photo capture and annotation tends to be an integral part of the solution. So again, with the utilities project we worked on, that photographs would be taken at the start of the job. They'd be taken at during the job at various stages to show, for example, how a meter was wired up. At the end of the job, and all of those images then would be combined and made available to someone, a manager in the company, to be able to go through and just sort of check and make sure that everything is compliant and so on. And obviously barcode scanning, that's part of the asset management piece. Again, it's pretty standard now in smartphones. You can scan a barcode, read assets and so on like that. So that tends to be the typical sort of features that goes together to provide a workforce management type solution. So a few common discussion points then, I just wanted to kind of bring up, if I can bring them in. So first one is domain knowledge. So this is something that, there's no easy way to get this, really. It's a difficult thing to achieve, but it's something that happens, again, in my experience working on these kind of projects, that when we first start talking to customers, they're talking about various different sort of acronyms and so on, and terminology, and things like that is completely new to us. And it tends to take us a couple of months before we're really able to talk to the customer on their level about their business. About, for example, again, this utilities project, understanding the different types of meters that they have to deploy. The different kind of implementations need to, the different kind of customers. It just takes time to get to that kind of knowledge. So it's something that it's very, very important to the successful deployment of a workforce management solution that the consultants on it gain that kind of domain knowledge of the industry. So, data loss generally is the number one absolute no-no for any of these solutions. Data loss is cannot happen at any level. So as soon as data loss as soon as there's any data loss, then users start to lose faith. The business can shut down the application. So it's absolutely critical that any data that is captured on those users' devices, first of all, that it gets up to the cloud, and it's there, and then when it gets onto the cloud, it needs to get into the back-end system. So it's generally the most sort of critical issue that we tend to come back around to. System capacity and performance testing. So obviously, it's very, very important. It's very important for the solution itself to be able to perform at the kind of capacity that is required by the volume of users and so on. But it's also very important that the back-end system that we're interfacing to can also support that as well. Quite often, when we're dealing with these kind of solutions, it may be the first time the customer has had these sort of connections into their system. Again, I keep referring back to the utilities company, they developed a SOAP interface specifically for this solution back into their ESB system. And it was the first time that anything really connected into the ESB to provide this kind of data in. So it was very much an unknown for them, so the performance test was just as important on that side as it was on our side. But unfortunately it can happen, and it's happened in projects I've been involved with, where not enough attention has been paid to performance testing, and it's come back and caused an issue when users have ramped up and so on. So it's pretty critical. Obviously, I mentioned this before. Obviously, offline use, connectivity. It's absolutely critical that these kind of solutions will work in offline and online mode, and bad connection areas and so on, or that. So it's always part of the process to test those kind of situations. Compliance as well. So again, a lot of these industries that tend to be quite heavily regulated. There tends to be compliance around various different workflows. Again, I'm going to keep referring back to the utility company all the time. That there was constant updates around safety checks for their field engineers. So pretty much almost on a kind of a quarterly basis, there were new compliance regulations that had to be carried out by those engineers before they were allowed to carry out work. And the application needed to have the ability to update those compliance checks dynamically and push those sort of checks out to the users. So it's very important. User adoption then, obviously, none of these solutions are going to work without buy-in from the business, without good user adoption. But thankfully, I haven't experienced a situation yet where users have preferred the old method. They tend to be, they tend to be really, really happy with this, with the new solution. And, obviously, that's great, and we need to keep that, we need to keep it like that. So, if there's any kind of data loss or any sort of doubt creeps in, user adoption can start to fall off. So, it's all linked into reliability and data loss as well, So so quite often in these solutions, though, it's necessary to integrate to multiple points, on the back-end systems. So by multiple points of integration, it could be a CRM system we might need to connect into to get customer information. There could be an Active Directory system to connect into for authentication. There might be a job dispatch system then to obviously get the jobs information as well. And it's the ability to integrate with those multiple points can really make these solutions valuable. And that's the kind of stuff that generally it would be very difficult to do without having some kind of middleware piece that's able to connect in and talk to these different services. We would tend to do that through, when we come to do mobile application platform projects, we would do that with reusable services, which would speak the language of the back-end system and then provide a RESTful interface to other applications to use then within the system. So, but it's pretty key. So fast versus slow IT, so that, again, that tends to be something that we tend to run up against. Quite often, these kind of projects, they tend to work in a sort of an agile methodology, and that can be the first time that the department we're working with has maybe worked in that kind of methodology. They're more used to the sort of slow, sort of waterfall approach, dealing with their sort of back-end systems. So educating the customers into how to work in a kind of an agile, fast method is often a big part of the project, and that can take time for everyone to get up to speed with. And bring your own device. Obviously, that's very, very important for customers. So we tend to focus on hybrid app development, which will run across multiple different device types, across Android, iOS, and so on. In my experience, we tend to build Cordova-based apps. You may be using Angular, Ionic, those kind of things, and then they'll deploy across different device types. But as well as that, bring your own device also presents security issues around what happens if that user leaves the company, what happens if their device is stolen, and so on. So ensuring that any data that is on that device is encrypted, maybe providing a kind of a remote wipe functionality. That's all stuff that needs to be taken into account. And in fact, security encryption is the last thing. So we tend to, we tend to involve some sort of security personnel on the client side who will do an audit of our project. They will understand exactly what kind of data is being stored on the client device, what's their exposure to if that device is theft, is stolen, what kind of customer data is there, and they'll make an assessment then based on that. But it's very important to have an understanding of that so that they can have that information at hand. Any questions on any of that at all? Yeah. Okay. I think that was the last point there. Oh yeah, Center of Excellence. Yeah. So yeah, this is something that we tend to try and work towards with our customers. That a big part of this is obviously we provide the consultancy services around building these applications, and they're built on top of the Red Hat mobile application platform. But on the customer side, quite often they will look to set up their own Center of Excellence around building and deploying these apps across the business. And this kind of workforce management solution could be the first one, and then they'll then roll those out and start looking at other opportunities. But using these reusable services all the time with these multiple integration points, basically once the first project is done, the later ones tend to be a lot easier. So that's what we try and get to, and that's an area that at Red Hat Consulting we will guide the customers towards building out these Center of Excellence. So if you look at a typical project, this is a kind of a typical sort of engagement where we may do a workforce management project. These are the kind of the key players that we would see on the client side. Obviously, technical architect, someone who's going to give us SOAP interfaces to their back-end systems, help us work on integrating all the back-end and vice versa as well. Business analyst who's going to spend a lot of time looking at their business, because these types of projects tend to be very, very complex. There could be a lot of different workflows, a lot of different variables to take into account. So the business analyst role really is key to getting all that information documented. A sponsor then on the business, someone who's going to continually work through the project and be the voice of the business, to say whether or not particular features will work well, whether they'll like different changes and so on. So they're the guys who will go back to the users and get their feedback and relate it into the project. And then there tends to obviously be a Scrum Master then on the client side. And quite often, again, they could be new to Agile, so we may need to train the customers on how to be Scrum Masters, or we will provide that service as well. As I said, we tend to go through an Agile methodology on these projects. We tend to go with hybrid client development. Doesn't have to be, that tends to be it. And normally kind of a 6-month sort of timeline to get these kind of solutions out. So if you look at a typical project, we tend to get a kind of a deliverable after about 2 months, which is an initial sort of minimal viable product, if you like, which is a bare bones set of features which allows users to start using the which allows users to start doing something with the app. Maybe one type of workflow, one type of job, and that might be released out to a small group of early adopters who are willing to sort of provide feedback and do that kind of thing. So that tends to be the first stage. Some customers call that a POC. We don't call it a POC. We call it minimal viable product. So that's the first stage, and again probably partial device support at that point as well. And then that moves into sort of full project delivery. Then tends to be again after around 6 months, where we will build out more workflows, full sort of functionality then from start to finish, and then at this point then we'll start to ramp up then to more and more users to 100% adoption. So that's the typical kind of flow. So these are sample kind of things that we kind of tend to build out for customers. So this is what you could expect really with a kind of a workforce management solution. After you log in, you've got your list of jobs. You would select a job, and then you would then be guided through the various different steps of those jobs. Then, so that tends to be the sort of what the end result tends to be. And the idea is that all of these fields here and all of these options, they all need to be totally customizable so that they can be changed and added and customized and all that kind of stuff. So that's the norm. Any questions?
Back to your security and encryption.
Yeah.
We use that Citrix workflow. We use that for our security for all of our devices.
Right.
So you guys put in your own, or do you use third parties?
Well, it depends. Like, some customers they are happy that they have their own encryption technology on devices, and they deploy the solutions via MDM, and they have complete control over where the binaries are deployed and on what devices and so on. So they can be confident at that point that they've got it covered. In a project I'm working on at the moment, we are actually encrypting the data as well that we store on the device. And we're doing that. We're storing the keys on the cloud and so on, and unencrypting that as we need to. So really, we can work with whatever's suitable. But again, the most important thing with security really is really having a good understanding of what is being stored and how it is being stored, and having that documented so that it can be signed off by someone responsible on the client side to say they're happy with the level of risk and so on with that data. Yeah. So this is a typical portal that we might provide to customers, and this is something again which is something that customers wouldn't generally have when we first go into the organization, and it can give immediate feedback on where particular jobs are, what jobs have been assigned to different users, the output from a job as well, what information was collected on the job. That can all be viewed through this portal. So what I'm showing here is it's pretty much boilerplate screenshots from the workforce management component of the Red Hat mobile application platform. So I'll show that briefly. I mean, I'm not going to go into a big demo of the platform, but just want to kind of show the functionality that it provides out of the box. But when it comes to, and I'll come to that in a few minutes, but this is the typical architecture then, if you like, of how these type of solutions are put together. Okay, so obviously you've got your client-side devices here. These will tend to have synchronization built in then to synchronize between the client devices and the cloud application. So this cloud application will be running on the Red Hat mobile application platform. It would be a Node.js JavaScript application running there. So this will have custom business logic, which is all custom designed for this project, for this application. And we would always try and put as much of this sort of custom logic in this cloud as we can, so that can be updated and deployed without having to push out new builds to the client. So really what the clients tend to have to be able to do is effectively interpret form definitions and workflows and understand, how to route through a job. But really, how those workflows and so on are defined should sit here on the cloud piece. The cloud then will make use of local Mongo databases for data store, and also Redis as well, for caching information. The type of information that's stored here tends to be very much transient information. It may sit on the cloud for a very short period of time before it is sent back out maybe through SOAP to their ESP, to the customer's back-end systems. So there is always, there is a security analysis that needs to be done here, and there is, a kind of a data retention analysis that needs to be done here. Like, what is the risk if, for example, there's a disaster on this system? This part fails. What kind of information can be lost there? So it's important to understand that we tend to sort of have a rule that the information that might sit here for maybe 2 or 3 minutes before it's pushed up to the back-end system. So there's a very short period of time there where we have data that is gone from the client, it's sitting here, and then it needs to go back up to the back-end, and then it's removed from there then, So, we also have, as I say, we have the portal connecting into the cloud application as well, to look at, real-time activity on jobs and so on. We would have a number of different back-end services which will connect into all of these sort of back-end systems. And these would be reusable by multiple cloud applications. They're not just dedicated to this one cloud application. They could be used by another project and so on. And they will just provide a very simple sort of CRUD RESTful interface which can be consumed then by these cloud apps. And then quite often then we have some kind of push messaging ability as well. If we need to push out emergency jobs or dispatch notifications to users, they'll go out through standard sort of push messaging channels as well back out to the users. All right. Any questions on that part? No. So if we look at, I'm just going to briefly look at the Raincatcher piece then. So as I said, it's let me just go through here. Yeah, so basically Raincatcher is effectively some components which can be deployed on top of the Red Hat mobile application platform. They're there, a standard, they're part of the standard sort of templates when applications are built. In fact, I can bring it up here. So this is the Red Hat mobile application platform here. So if I was to go into projects, go to new project, you see down here at the bottom we have WFM demo project, okay? So if I was to build that, if I choose it, you can see it's going to create for me a demo portal, mobile app, and cloud application. So it's going to build all those applications for us. So that's the first thing I would need to do. I would need to set those up. Now all this is going to do is give me the kind of the building blocks to building a workforce management solution. It's not going to give me an out-of-the-box solution that I can immediately deploy to my users. But what it is going to give me is a very strong foundation that I can reuse these components and build on it. Because there tends to be a lot of things that we do, over and over again with these solutions. Like, for example, capturing photographs. Getting GPS data from users, uploading binary information, those kind of things. So these components are there; they're reusable, and they're part of the platform. But obviously, there would be consultancy service potentially on top of that then to build out the full solution. So once I've done that, I would also need to, within my services piece here, there's a service as well, which is, for this WFM piece, for the workforce management, there's also an authentication service that I can deploy. And again, it's a kind of a boilerplate skeleton service that I can build out my authentication for use in this project. So pretty much that's all I've done, if you like, at this level on this project. And and I can show you now what that gives us. So if I look at the project I created, so we have our service, we have our cloud application, and we have our mobile app and our portal. And they're all there ready to be used and ready to be sort of extended. So, one of the key things about this as well is that it uses the platform's ability to create drag and drop forms. So if I wanted to update a form for one of my field engineers, I can do that through the platform, and next time the engineer uses the app, they'll get the new form pushed out to them. That's the general concept. So, any questions? No? Just 1 sec. So I'll just briefly show that now. There's a couple of the functionalities here. So, so this is the portal. The user I'm logged into at the moment has got complete access to everything on the portal. You wouldn't normally have this sort of level of access. You might just have a dispatcher who's responsible for dispatching jobs and so on. But you can see here that this is the list of all the jobs in the system. So if I create a new job, which again, just this functionality alone can quite often be revolutionary to a company, to be able to have a customer on the phone with an issue, to be able to go to a portal, create a job, for that to be pushed out to a user in that kind of time frame can be really, really useful. And quite often we'll have a back channel then to push that job back into the back end system, as well as pushing out to the user. It'll tend to go into both places. So I'm just going to assign this to, I'm going to choose my workflow. I'll go for this app forms one. And I'm going to send it out to Trevor. Now, I need to put in some information. 1 second. That's my address at home. That's not a real longitude and latitude, but anyway. It caught me out there, hang on a second. Okay. So there's my work order, and that's assigned to Trevor Smith. Okay, so the idea would be now, as the user, I would have my device. I've installed this already, but effectively, what I can do, obviously from the platform, is I can go in here. I can build my mobile app. So there's the client application. I can go to build. So I'm going to choose that I'm going to do it for Android. Let me just click on build there. So we'll just give that a minute now. That's actually going to build the binary and give me a link to be able to download and install the app. So just give that a few seconds. Effectively, what we'll get from that when it's finished is we'll get this link here. There you go. We'll get this link up. And if I have a barcode scanner on my phone, I can just scan it or put in the URL. So I installed this earlier on. If I log in here, let's just have a look. See if I can get this new job up. So just logging in now. There we go. I don't see my new job there for some reason. It hasn't been dispatched out to me yet. Look, a new job. Okay. I'll give that a few minutes. It'll come out in a second. So that's the first thing, dispatching jobs out to users. Obviously, also what I can do is I can go in and I can actually edit now the forms that job will use. So I've just got one form here called light repair. and I should be able to go in, and if I need to, I can go in and edit the form, maybe add some fields, customize drop-downs, and so on. Now, there's an enormous amount of stuff we can do here. You know, we can link into back-end systems as well, you know, to populate drop-downs, put in standing data, all that kind of stuff. But you know, this gives a nice sort of GUI around doing that. And once I've created my form, then I can go in again as an admin user. I can go in here. I can find my form from the system. There it is. There's my form that I was just editing in the system, and I can assign that to a workflow. So you can see here, I've got my app forms one, and that has got the it's got that form associated with it. So, and we can move all that around. So, so basically, you know, you've got a lot of control over customizing the workflows and the forms and everything else there as well. You know, so but as I say, it's really the building blocks to be able to sort of build out these and deploy these full solutions. You know, so. Yeah, I still haven't got my job though, which is great. Demos never work, do they? It's worked for me last night. Does it work now? No. Definitely logged in as the right user. Anyway, but you can see here when I click on my workflow, I get the same form that we just brought up there. You know, I've got I can get location, I can take a photo and everything, and that's all built. There, you can see it there, exactly the same. I've got location, capture, take a photograph, everything as we see in the form there, you know. So if I make a change to this form, the next time I do a job, I'll get all of those updated forms and controls and so on here, you know. Yeah. All right. We go back to here. Where am I? Okay. That's just some of the components around the Raincatcher module. Again, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but the key is that it's been designed as, I suppose, a consistent development environment between the client and the cloud. So there are node modules which can be used on the client, which are used, you know, exactly the same modules are used on the cloud, you know, to do things like transfer images and all that kind of stuff. So it gives you this consistent approach around developing it. And it's been built in such a way that, you know, as a developer, the role would be to build out these modules, add in your own modules, but on top of this sort of foundation, which looks after, as I said, all of this thing around data security, you know, ensuring there's no data loss, authentication, all that kind of stuff is taken care of. And you can just sort of focus on the business then on top of that, you know. There you go. Any questions? I think we've got about 5 minutes.
Do we use the BPM to control the status change? For example, the order, the first days maybe is.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks.
So how do we control the workflow? So do we use BPM or do we just change use some test to change the status?
To change the workflow, so with the system I'm showing here, the workflows would be configured using the portal that I've just shown there.
Yeah.
And they would be built using either forms that have been dynamically created,
yeah,
or with sort of almost, you know, kind of custom developed forms which will be part of the system. So that tends to be how we do it there, but I believe there has been integration with BPM to do that kind of stuff. Is that right, Steve? Workflow integration with BPM? Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So how do we change the status in the mobile phone? How do we change the status in the mobile phone? Change the status.
Change the status.
Yeah.
That would come through from the user. So generally, the user will have the ability to, as they progress through the job,
yeah,
the status will be updated automatically. That will come into the platform, and quite often then there'll be logic on the cloud which will see that updated status coming from the client, and generally turn that into a REST call then, which goes to a back-end system to update that job and do whatever needs to be done there. You know. So, again, the first part of the problem really is getting the data from the client. And once we get the data onto the cloud, then we can then build processes around firing off various different sort of calls and so on based on that,
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
no problem. Any other questions? There we go.
But is there anything you have to change? Depends on iPad versus iOS or Android, different device?
No, so the question is there any differences between anything we need to change to deploy on iOS or Android and so on? Well, no, not really, no, there shouldn't be, no. What we tend to build our solutions on top of Cordova. So Cordova will look after, integrating with the native OS. So, making the native calls to the camera functionality, the GPS functionality and so on. And it provides a standard JavaScript layer then that the application developer will then interface with. So you can see here, the ability here when I go to build a binary, that just from the platform here I can build for either Android or iOS as I need to, and that will use exactly the same code base and it'll run on either environment. So yeah, Android and iOS tend to be very simple. Where we have problems is when the customer says it also has to run an Internet Explorer. That's always where the problem is, because as developers we tend to develop in Chrome and Safari, and that's kind of the environment we all work in. We know then when we push it out to iOS and Android it'll work, but it's always the problem. It's getting easier, it is getting easier, but it's still the main headache, And they tend to say that sort of about 3 months into the project. Oh yeah, by the way, it has to run on Internet Explorer. Yeah, so. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right, thanks everyone.